Okay, for the last part of the file folder art journal, we're going to go ahead and do the cover. You can see I've already done the front cover here. Got quite a bit of stenciling on there. So we'll go ahead and flip it so we can see the back, and you can see that I've already kind of started with putting down some of the colors. So I've got abandoned coral, spiced marmalade, and fossilized amber. And I'm just going to go ahead and, kind of like I've done on some of the other pages, just get a little bit onto the background here. And I'm going to go ahead and spritz and dry. Okay, so we are pretty dry to the touch, at least here. Now what I'm going to do is pull that out of the way so that I'm working directly on my craft mat. And now I'm going to come back here and get some more color on my mat, and I'm pressing down to get the color from the pad onto the mat. I want to get a little bit of worn lipstick, just a little bit, and how about some more spiced marmalade. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and spray that, make sure that I can see the dots of water, that the ink, so I can see the ink coming up into the water on the surface. And now I'm going to get another layer of color. I'm just going to take the paper and smush it right down in there. So this is just going to be a different way to apply it, and it'll get me a different look. And do that a few times. Get some around the edge here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and dry this. Alright, that is mostly dry, and now I want to go in and get a little bit more. I'm just going to drag that right through. I want to get some more along the edges. Okay, now I want a little bit more of the abandoned coral so that it is a little bit more like what's on the cover, because I really like that. Instead of spritzing that directly with water, I'm going to go back and do that kind of ghost printing again with my stencil. So I've got my ornamental floral screen stencil again. I'm just going to press that down in there. And I'm really not looking for anything dark, which is why I like this technique for this, because it'll give me some subtle pattern and texture in the background, just a little bit. I mean, it's hard to see, so it probably is not showing up on camera too well, because I want the focus to be the stenciling that's going to go in the foreground. Okay, so there's a little bit of pattern in there. And now I want to do another of this decorative area here. So this is my Art Deco book plate stencil, and you can see I've used that one on the front. Now, do I want to use the same on the back, or do I want to use a different one? Let's just go crazy and use the other one. So I'm pulling out peacock feathers again, and I'm going to go ahead and just stencil that directly through. Once again, I'm going to clean that off with a baby wipe. I generally wipe off any pigment inks since they don't really dry, especially on plastic, unless you've heat set them. Okay, we'll set that aside. And I'm going to go ahead and spritz this. You can see on the front that that has become much more faded and blended into the background, and I want to do that same on the back. You can see I'm continuing to add water. Each time you do that, that'll make that oxidizing effect happen just a little bit more. And you get dots on top of dots on top of dots, which is really cool looking. you can see here that I've got a little bit more pattern in the background. So I'm going to take, let's switch over to Broken China. I'll grab my ornamental floral screen again, and then the decorative 6-petal flower. And I am not doing anything really. You could mask this off if you wanted to. I'm not even worried about that. I'm just going to go ahead and lay the stencil over here, and then just kind of eyeball where the openings are, where I want to add a little bit of pattern, and just kind of get a little bit more. You can see how I'm just putting just a little touch of pattern there in the open spaces. Now I am going to just lightly spritz that and dry. Okay, so that's all dry, and now what I want to do is add a little bit of color in here and color in some of the openings in the stencil design. So what I'm going to do is just take a little bit of ink and put it on my craft mat. I'm just going to do one color at a time. I'm just going to take a water brush, make sure that the tip is clean from the last time I used it and that it's nice and wet. And then I'm just going to pick the color up here and add this in watercolor with it. And you can see it's going on pretty opaque. That will all depend on how much water you add to it. If I want to thin that down, I can add some water. Okay, so you can see that these Distress Oxide inks make really fantastic watercolors. I'm going to go ahead and get my scrap paper and just print that right off the mat. These types of papers here, I just keep adding paint and marks and cleanup to them until I get just a cool piece of paper, and then that goes into a file and I'll use that for collage later on. Now I'm going to repeat this. I'm going to use some peeled paint and do a little bit more watercoloring here. On the front, you can see where I added some stenciling, and for that I used my Art Deco alphabet stencil for art, and then I used the word inside from the Inside Out stencil. And on the back, I think I'm just going to put my initials. And I'm going to give that a little spritz. As we know by now that I really like to have that kind of blend into the background and get that oxidizing effect. And now the other thing you can see on the cover, you'll notice there's a little bit of pattern. And I've taken the Inside Out stencil again. You can tell it's definitely one of my favorites. I'm going to do the same thing and go ahead and just line it up and kind of extend that linear line out to the edges. And I did deliberately pick up some of this texture on the outside, and I'm going to flip the stencil so that I get a little bit of that on both sides. And I think that looks really cool. Alright, I could just keep going. I'm going to go ahead and stop. And add a little bit more water and dry. So the stenciling is done. Now you can see I've already added this tissue tape along the spine, and I'm going to take a different pattern and kind of match up a little bit what I've done there. So I'm going to add a little bit of stamping just for fun, just a little bit of extra texture, and just going to go ahead and get some of this dark brown. Now I'm going to get my foam blending tools back out again and go ahead and do my, I'm going to go ahead and do my framing. That's it. Now you can see on the front I have this little window. I'm not going to do that on the back, but I just cut out the circle from the design. Just backed that with some of this tissue paper. And that's it. So that is the completed art journal. Now this is a little bit wavy from all the papers. You could just put that under some heavy books. I happen to right now be the custodian of a very nice book press, so I'm probably going to put some wax paper around this and I'll put it in the book press so that everything flattens out and is nice and straight and smooth and ready for me to art journal.